Welcome to Keep the Hotel Empty. I'm your host, Eric Paul. In studio today, we are grateful to welcome in reggae musician, DJ MC, and positive vibration embodied, Badda Skat. In today's episode, Badda discusses his roots, how Rastafarianism came into his life, and the ins and outs of his many roles in the music world. Please enjoy. Welcome to Keep the Hotel Empty. Today we've kept the hotel empty to welcome in MC, producer, musician, and all-around excellent vibe, Badda Skat.
Respect. Thank you, man.
Yeah, Badda, welcome, man.
My pleasure to be here, man. My pleasure.
So I know that there's some people out there familiar with you, some people not familiar with you, so I want to kind of take it back to a little bit where the line starts. Tell me about where the worldview of the reggae world, the Rasta world, starts to come into your life.
Like about when, you mean?
Yeah, when? What was...
Well, it probably started it started when I was a kid. So I'd say probably around like 9 years old is when I really started to get interested in Rastafari. And that just came through music and just hearing, Bob Marley sing about Rastafari. I was like, what is that? What is that word even about? And so that's kind of what started my research into it. And then I quickly realized that it was much more than just a belief system. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of life. It's a daily thing. So as soon as I was able to, kind of like branch out from being underneath my parents' roof and their kind of oversight, and I was able to kind of explore it a little bit more, I started to take on the lifestyle more, and that has just led me into an even greater understanding of just the spiritual world as a whole. And so, now I really consider Rastafari as really just a pathway to kind of get you to that greater oversight, that greater viewpoint of all of creation. So now I really kind of just see it as more of a, again, just kind of like the path that has led me to where I am now, which is basically like I really consider myself a member of all different faiths. I like to explore everything now, and I'm finding more of the interconnected similarities between everything as I'm on this journey and this exploration as well. So, it's really just brought me to a much greater understanding of everything.
So 9 is pretty young. So what was it like? What was the scene like? Were your parents into reggae music? Was that scene around you?
Not at all. Yeah, no, my parents were much more into pop stuff, modern, or just a top 40 stuff that's on the radio. I heard it first when we used to travel down to the Keys a lot, and I remember being in Key West and just walking around the shops, back when I was young with my mom, and just hearing it coming out of one of the shops, and just hearing reggae music. It was actually Shaba was the first reggae artist that I heard.
Nice.
And I was like, what is this? Like, what is that sound? What is that? Everything just captivated me. The accent, the beats, the bass, and so it was like, my parents really they had no knowledge of it, so I would seek it out in music shops. So I would just go to the music shop in the mall, and back in the day, you used to be able to listen to stuff before you could buy it. So, right. I would just go to the reggae section and just listen to everything. And I'd be in the music shop for hours, like just be in the mall at the record store for hours, just listening to stuff. And that's really where I learned about reggae music, and where I really got my first taste of it.
Do you remember the first record you got? This is a question that seems to come up. Do you remember the first physical reggae record you got?
Yeah. The first reggae album that I bought was it was Terror Fabulous. Yaga Yaga was the name of the album. And man, I still have it.
What led you to that? That's digging deep for coming out of the gate.
Well, I was into that. I was originally attracted to dancehall. That was really what I like. I first started listening to people like Shaba and Snow and Shaggy and Buju Banton and Sizzla, and that was much different than Bob Marley and Peter Tosh,
That was that modern dance hall.
Yeah, totally. That the roots came later. I first heard dance hall first, and that's what I was attracted to. And so yeah, that's the type of stuff that I liked when I was younger.
So did you start making that music? Was that the first reggae that you made was in that vein too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I wanted to sound like Buju Banton, man. I wanted to sound like, I wanted to sound like Buju and Sizzla. And so when the first songs I would make, like that's what I tried to do. Like I tried to emulate my voice like them and everything, tried to put a little raspiness on it and try to make it deeper and until I found my own sound, know?
Yeah.
But in that process, I was trying to sound like them.
So how long between spending hours in the mall digging through everything you can dig through to making that first track was it?
It was a long time. I mean, I started recording myself and started making my own songs in about 2001. So, I would spend like the majority of my high school free time at the mall at the record shop. And so, years. It took years before I was able to actually record myself and, start taking that path too.
Yeah, because a lot of it is, I guess, getting some of the background of all those records. What were some of the things you were learning from those early records?
Oh, man. Really just a lot about, like, morality, kind of how to carry yourself. I learned that, especially from people you wouldn't expect maybe, like Shabba Ranks, you wouldn't expect him to be somebody who promotes respect towards women. Dancehall usually isn't a genre that you would, normally point out as being a respectful genre.
Yeah.
But yet I learned a lot of respect towards women, towards females, from dancehall music. It's like bigging up your mothers, the woman is the mother of creation. This is something you have to cherish. It's something you have to uphold. So yeah, that's a lot of what I got from it initially. And just the livity, the day-to-day lifestyle of it, the holding yourself upright, the not necessarily doing the things you used to do now that you have this new level of consciousness, So yeah, it really helped shape the way the way I carried myself, at a young age, for sure.
Had anything in your life been profound like that to that point, or was reggae the most profound thing and the subsequent information from it?
That's a great question. When I was young, my mom really, my dad wasn't a very religious person, but my mom wanted to have religion in her life. Mm-hmm. And so when I was about 17, we went through the Catholic initiation process. And so, but I had already been studying reggae music and Rastafari, for years before that. Mm-hmm. And so that had a profound impact on me, but more so in the fact that it taught me to question everything, because I was going to these Catholic religious classes and they were telling us all this history and all of these things. And then I'd be like, but wait a minute, isn't the Solomonic dynasty, doesn't that have roots in Ethiopia as well? Wasn't that in the, and I would ask questions and
that was your first mistake.
Yeah. And then it was like, I didn't necessarily get back answers. I would get runaround or I'd get diversion or I'd get confusion. And then I started to realize, okay, maybe we're not getting the full story. You know what I mean? Maybe we need to ask these deeper questions. And yeah, that's kind of what also led me into like religious studies. I did a lot of that in college. And so, and it stemmed from my upbringing in that time and questioning the things that I had learned from reggae music to these, religious scholars and them not having answers, So it was like, all right, well, we got to keep digging,
right.
We got to keep digging here. So
what in that digging have you found that's been more universally applicable as opposed to like, more stringent things like the Catholic faith or whatever, with this broader worldview? Fundamentally,
we're all on the same path. So no matter what religion you follow, no matter what belief system you adhere to, When you take away all of the extremities, when you take away all of the dogma, when you take away all of the judgment and all of the, the conflict, at the foundation, they're all the same. And they all have the same basic principles. Be good to others. Don't do anything that may lift yourself up but harm other people in the process. Care for the young and the old. These are basic things that apply to all different faiths. And that's one of the greatest things I've learned is that, fundamentally they're all meant to bring you up to be the best version of yourself.
And you've been able to use that as the backbone for all these different things you've gotten into. So you start making music before you start emceeing events and things like that? Was that your first foray into it?
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been a performer for a long time.
Yeah. So take me back to how that starts. What's the beginning of your music? You making first tracks?
Yep. I started. A friend of mine gave me a bootleg copy of Sony Acid, which is
it's always a bootleg copy.
Yeah, it was my very first, DAW, my very first recording program, and that's what opened the floodgates. I mean, that's what really got me inspired in the whole recording process and studios and gear and microphones and so that's what really got me into music, and that's where I started. So I would make my own beats and I would write my own lyrics and record on top of them, but it didn't have the sound that I wanted. I wanted instruments. I wanted real music,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to link with a band called Ja Roots.
Mm-hmm.
And this was back in the MySpace days. I hit them up on MySpace, and they actually were releasing instrumentals and looking for other singers to just jump on them, to just, put their verses on top of it.
Cool.
So they originally released 7 instrumental tracks, and I downloaded them all and wrote songs to all of them and sent it back. And they were like, oh, this is great, man. We love this stuff. And then they released an album, and I messaged them and said, hey, can I have all the instrumentals from that album to make my own? And they're like, go for it. So that's what allowed me to release my very first album. Is I had all of these full band instrumental tracks already mixed, already mastered.
God, that's rare.
I just had to put my voice on it, and so it was great. It was great, and that's really where it started.
So then from there, did you go out and perform those tracks solo, or did you get a band? How'd you keep the ball rolling?
I first performed those tracks with Ja Roots. They came down to Florida. We booked some shows around here, and we did a little run through Florida. And then they booked some shows through Georgia, Missouri, Ohio. We did a nice little Midwest run. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2007 when we first started doing that. And, that lasted for a couple months. But they lived in Missouri and me living down here, so it wasn't something that could be done regularly.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So then I started looking for a band. I started, wanting to really build my band and put it together. But I was working corporate at the time. I didn't have a lot of spare time. I didn't have really the drive and the inspiration to push through that. And when I left the corporate world is really when I was like, okay, this is it. I have to do this.
Well, talk to me about that. How do you get to the point where you're like, I'm gonna make the left turn?
Oh man, well, it's something I had been thinking about for a while.
What were you doing in corporate world?
I was at a web development company.
Okay. And
I started there just doing data entry, but I eventually ended up doing support, customer support, and moved on to sales, and came back to customer support. When I left, I was the senior support specialist, so I was the head of support, and it was. It was a international multi-million-dollar web development company, and we had clients all over the world, and it was really stressful.
You could have stayed if you wanted, though.
Oh yeah,
long
totally.
Story short.
Yeah, I was making great money, and it was But my grandfather passed away, and that's really what made me think about things in a more in a more I don't want to make it sound negative, but in a more time is limited. Time is not infinite.
Right.
We don't get to experience time infinitely. The amount of time that we do get to spend on this planet is really the blink of an eye.
Right.
So that made me think about I got to take this chance. I gotta give it a shot. Regardless of what may happen. I feel like this is what I was meant to do and what I am being called to do. And if I continue to justify staying in Babylon, staying in this system that I talk negatively about all the time, yet here I sit and then try to go and make that type of I felt very, very hypocritical. I felt like, I wasn't being true to myself and to the things that I stand for. And I didn't feel like I had time to mess around anymore. So it was like, you know what, I'm going all in. And I left the corporate world, and I was just like, I had no plan. I had no idea of what I was going to do. I had
Love that.
No band, no nothing. And I was just like, but, I had life, and so I had an opportunity. And from there, I just, I knew a couple musicians. I knew a couple people who played instruments, but I didn't have anybody who I was really like, gravitating towards. And then one night, a friend of mine who played guitar was like, hey, Kenny Bongos from Soja is coming over and we're just going to be jamming. You want to just come by? And I was like, well, yeah, let's do this. And so I just went over to hang out, and he had invited another one of his friends who played bass. And so we had Kenny Bongos on percussion, my friend Dan on guitar, and my other friend Sean on bass. And we just started freestyling. And then I think it was the bass player who was like, hey, we should probably like look into doing this more regularly.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, we might be able to get a band out of this.
And this was pre or post leaving corporate world?
This was post.
Okay.
This was post, yeah.
So you left without that net?
Yeah, oh yeah. I had no plans, no nothing. Like, so when I linked up with these guys, and it was shortly after. I really was like, okay, maybe I made the right decision, like maybe everything is happening like this because it's supposed to. And yeah, and then from there, I everybody seemed to know other musicians. So once I linked up with my guitar and bass, they're like, oh yeah, well, I know a drummer. Or, yeah, I know another guy who can come play keys. Or why don't we get another guitar player and maybe try some lead stuff? Or
right. So
then we just started doing rehearsals, and I was just able to kind of pick the musicians that I was, resonating with, and then that became the band. And then we just started getting shows. Like, when I first started performing out, like, I didn't book anything. Like, people just booked me. And so it was very surreal because it was all these things that I had dreamed about and I had envisioned just kind of happening, just like unfolding right before me.
How did that feel?
Incredible. I mean, I think about it, today even still, because it still happens. These types of things still happen, and it just like, it shocks me sometimes, but it also makes me realize the power that we have over our reality, and the things that we dwell on, the things that we think about ultimately end up becoming our reality. I mean, I'm sure you also had the vision of you doing this at one point in time, sitting here talking to people.
Yes.
And here it is.
Right.
Everything in this room was once just an idea of somebody's.
Exactly.
That then manifested into this physical reality that we're in right now. And I think about the times where I would think about, man, I'd love to be on a big stage, like a Reggae Rise Up or a festival somewhere, and just look out and just see tons of people. And I've done that multiple times. I'd love to open up for one of the Marleys. I've opened up for all of them. You know what I mean? So it's like these types of things, just the things I would sit and think about at night before falling asleep have all become reality.
Well, you got to see it in your mind to hold it in your hand.
Totally.
So how do you... that's not an easy thing for people to do. How have you been able to have the resolve to rely on your instincts enough to do things like leave a corporate job? Because at that point, where were you at in your personal life? Were you father at that point?
No, not yet.
Okay,
not yet.
So that made that part a little bit easier.
It was a little bit easier, yeah. Like it was just me and my wife, so it was just us that we really had to worry about. But it's difficult. It's not always easy. There's definitely times where I doubt myself, and I doubt, not necessarily if I've made the right decisions, but if the decisions that I've made have ended up the way I was hoping they were going to end up. So, and I think that's something that all artists do.
Right, yeah.
I kind of think it's something maybe all people do.
Sure.
But, I do also feel like as an artist, I may be more critical of myself because I put a lot of emotion and feeling and heart into the things that I create. As where somebody's just doing a job, they just go there to do the job and they can leave and they can go home. I can't disconnect from my songs. I can't disconnect from the studio.
Right.
That's my whole life. So in those instances, sometimes it may feel like there's a little more pressure. But I always have faith that what happens is supposed to happen. And even if it's not necessarily what I am intending or what I want to happen, I still always believe that it's supposed to be. So whatever ends up happening, I just, I try to make the most of it in that moment.
And having enough of those to draw on has made it easier. But when you're back at the beginning of starting to play live shows and, you're just on the first base, let's say, of leaving corporate world, what is that like? What are you thinking? What do you think the future is going to hold? Or are you literally going day by day and it's trust the process? Yeah.
I've never had like a 5-year plan. I've never tried to look at things in a a futuristic viewpoint, because really all we have is right now. This moment is really all that exists. And so I try not to I do my best not to worry about what the future may hold or things that I may need to, like deadlines or bills or whatever that may exist in the future. I try my best not to worry about those, but I'm human.
Yeah.
We do exist in this system.
Right.
So it's kind of, it is difficult to detach from that type of stuff all the time. But, it's like just having that that kind of faith within yourself, that things are going to happen the way they're supposed to happen. That's kind of just what keeps me going.
And do you think that you're able to have that feeling because you keep your commitments to yourself, or do you think that's just the nature of things that you've recognized?
Maybe a little bit of both. I think through my commitment to myself, I've been able to realize these things. I think, that might not necessarily be true for everybody else.
Right.
And so, I think it's a little bit of both.
So when you're kicking in the band and you're getting going, that commitment's starting to roll, what takes you to step 2? When do you start emceeing? When do you start hosting shows? Because you broaden out pretty far.
I've always kind of done everything myself. So, I've always done my own DJing, my own producing, my own designing, mixing, mastering. I've always done it myself. So I kind of feel like it was just kind of the natural progression. When I wasn't able to have the band back me up, I would need to have a way to still have music that I could sing to.
Right.
And so I kind of figured out a way to DJ for myself. And I remember playing, Janice live like that, and my own DJ singing my own songs by myself up on that stage. And then that kind of led me into also the love of music. I love everything about it. I love vinyl. I love record players. I love the old school roots stuff. You know what I mean? So I collect a lot of that. And then I wanted to play it, and I wanted other people to hear it too. So I used to do live DJ sessions. Like I would broadcast live back in the day before all the copyright infringement stuff would lock you down. I used to broadcast live on the internet. And then that led me into DJing out at other shows.
So your initial DJing was online?
Yes. Yeah. I started DJing on like Ustream.
Okay.
And then moved to Facebook Live. And I used to do like lunchtime DJ sessions on Fridays, and I did lots of different things before they cracked down. Before it really got really restrictive. But then that people would see me DJ online and be like, oh, you're a DJ as well? And I'm like, yeah. So then I'd get booked at other shows as a DJ, and then that's what led into being an MC, because I would offer. So I would link up with a festival or link up with an event that's happening as the DJ. And then I would say, do you have an MC as well? Because I can also do that for you. And they'd be like, oh, all right, well, we get kind of like a combo deal. And
Smart.
so, yeah, and that kind of led me into the MC world. And now it's kind of taken on a life of its own. You know, there's a lot of shows that I just MC. I don't DJ.
Yeah.
I don't do anything else.
Right.
I'm just the MC of the event, and that's something that I didn't intend on happening. You know, I really started music as a performer, and all of these other things just kind of grew into it. You know, just through my activism and my participation in all areas of music. So.
Yeah, and I know I personally particularly enjoy your DJing because you got a really broad buffet.
Thanks, man.
How did you go from the doorstep of dance hall into all that? Where does dub and those things start to come in for you?
They're all connected. I mean, it's dub music goes back so far. I mean, dub music goes back to the 70s.
Right.
So, I mean, and that was like my first, that's the first kind of music that I really, as a producer, dub music highlights the producer, highlights the engineer. So that's where I was like, oh, wait a minute. So now I get to kind of run the game here. You know, I get to do the live automation or whatever it may be. And you know, that's kind of like, that really gave me that charge to kind of, you know, get into that more. So yeah, I mean, it's like that, it just kind of, I just love all of it. You know what I mean? So I explore all the different areas of it, and that leads me into the different genres, different production techniques, different mixing aspects, you know, all of it. So it's
one door is always open and another for you. That's clear.
Exactly.
So that kind of takes me to the next thing then. So the DJing comes in out of necessity. Mm-hmm. The MCing kind of comes in because it's just a total marriage of convenience.
Yep.
You've already been producing your own music from the jump.
Yep.
When do you start producing music for other people?
Just very recently, actually. Within the last few years, have I started working with other producers and other artists. And mainly because I've got a lot of stuff like in the vaults, you know, in the Badda Skat vaults, there's literally hundreds of songs. Like, I've got hundreds of tracks that have never seen the light of day. Everything from instrumentals to full vocal productions and everything. So I started, like, kind of just passing these beats along to other people. Like, I'd send some to, like Skillinja or to Gary Dredd or to, other musicians, and just kind of see how they were feeling them or what what inspiration came to them from those tracks. And then that just kind of started, building into creating full projects for other artists, So yeah, now I try to, it's just another avenue, like I like to do creative things. I like to make things that nobody's ever heard before. And so a lot of the projects that I'm working on right now are, I wouldn't even call them reggae. I wouldn't call them dancehall. They're like, they're otherworldly creations, They're just like things that I try to come up with or try to make that nobody's ever heard before.
So out of all of this extra music that you have and all of these fresh ideas, how do you decide what you're going to put out and get behind, and how do you decide what just sits in the ether for now?
Man, that is the struggle that I'm in at this very moment. Like, I used to just release it as it was done. So I'd make stuff, I'd finish it, and then I'd release it. And I kind of wanted to get out of that pattern, and I wanted to get ahead of myself. Mm-hmm. A lot of the musicians that I look up to tend to have things done beforehand. Like, something will be released, but they'll already have something finished that's waiting on deck to be released right after that. So you kind of stay with the momentum and stay on top of that. And like I said before, I used to just chase it. So it'd be done, I'd put it out. It'd be done, I'd put it out. So I tried to, I took a step back. I didn't release anything for a long time. And in 2020, I released a whole bunch of singles. Every 2 weeks, I was dropping a single.
Dang.
And
was that pandemic fuel or what?
A little bit. But it was also kind of like, trying to crack the algorithm a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to stay on top of it because it was, the kind of general rule of thumb is if you could put out something once a month, your relevance will kind of stay in you'll stay warm.
Right.
So I was like, once a month, I could do twice a month. So I was putting them out every 2 weeks.
I can name that tune.
Totally. So, and like I said, I have stuff, like I've got lots of tracks. So I was just finishing them, getting them done, putting them out. And though they were, I really enjoyed them, I didn't have time to promote them. I didn't have time to pitch them, to get them on playlists. I didn't have time to get people interested and excited about them the way I was.
Right.
So I felt like they kind of lacked a little bit in their, people didn't gravitate to those. They didn't resonate with them as much because I didn't get a chance to push them.
Sort of the limitations of being one man.
Exactly. So to get around that, I tried to get ahead of myself. Well, now I'm in a position to where I've got all this stuff, but now I'm hesitant because I've taken the time, I've finished it, I've gotten ahead of it, but now I really want to release it right. And I want to do it properly, and I want it to have a lasting effect, and I want it to really get heard. And I'm not really sure how to do that because I've never done that before. I've always just pushed it. So, that's things I'm researching now. I'm trying to think. I'm also trying to not do everything. I'm trying to build a little team to where I can delegate this type of stuff to other people, to where I don't have to be on top of it 24/7. I can be focused on the creative aspect of things and not worry about all of the other stuff. Because there's a lot of things.
Yeah. So that brings me to a question that we've been talking about with a lot of the artists that have come in. How do you feel about the way the singles in the album game is played now with release? Because you're somebody who has background in listening to a whole album. Buying a record and hearing it front to back is not uncommon. But now this is a tall order, and you got to play the singles game. Where's your feelings lie in that?
Oh man, I miss it. I miss albums. I miss the old days, man. I miss getting a CD and opening it up and putting the CD in and reading all the lyrics and reading all of the information about it, where it was recorded, who the musicians were. That's all lost information now. People stream stuff so quickly. If it doesn't catch their attention in 10 seconds, you can skip it to something else.
True.
Infinitely. There's no limit. And the amount of music that now people have access to, 300,000 songs get released on Spotify every day.
I know.
So to try to stand out in all of that, where people, like I said, can skip you in seconds, it's tough, man. It's tough. And it's not what drew me to music. I spent hours in the record shops listening to the tracks, reading the stuff, before I would even buy it, before I would even decide to purchase it, it already captivated me. So that doesn't exist. The instant gratification that people have with music accessibility kind of takes away from, I feel, the relationship that you build with music. These songs are supposed to be the soundtrack of your life.
Right.
You need to develop a relationship with them. Songs need to have a personal attachment, and I think that's harder to get in these times.
Yeah, and I think the reggae world particularly has a good way of inviting people into having a more tangible nature to it, especially if you're one of the types that read the liner notes, because everybody was kind of involved with everybody, and you could pick players, and you knew who the producer was. And now it's all become a little bit more faceless.
Totally.
So
Totally.
what do you do to do that, to combat that? Do you just try to be yourself as much as you can and hope for the best, or do you? Because if we think about, if you could have heard a new King Tubby track every 2 weeks, it would have been nuts. As it was, they released singles more frequently than we got albums in the 80s and 90s, but it still wasn't every 2 weeks.
Right.
So how do you find the happy medium there, or what do you see the happy medium being for you?
I try to still hold on to the roots. My last album that I released, I did on vinyl.
Oh, nice.
So, but it's...
You still got those available?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure we got a link in the bio for those.
For sure.
In the description for those.
Yeah, absolutely. So I still try, because I see value in that. I still see value in reading the lyrics. I still see value in reading the liner notes and getting all that information. So I try to I try to incorporate it into my releases. Like it's very difficult for me to just put something out in the digital realm. I still feel like you need to print it. You still got to have a CD. You still got to have a record or something, to that people can, that's tangible, that they can hold in their hands, So even like even the instrumental things that I've done recently, I've still put them to CD. Like I've still, even if it's a short run, 200 prints, like I still got CDs of them, just because I feel like there is still some value in it, but it's a dying art. It's not something that people seek out like they used to. So with the singles game, it's just a different game. You just have to, if that's what you're going for.
Well, it's the battle for relevancy.
True. But I also feel like, there's still, people are still wanting to hear good music. And if they have to wait a little bit for it, they will. Like, you don't have to release a single. You don't have to put out singles every month. You don't. If you want to kind of stay in the numbers and stay like that and keep popping up in people's playlists, then yes, you do. But if you just want to release albums and just release good quality albums, you could do that. People will still come back and buy them. They'll still come back and they'll listen to your stuff. They'll start streaming those albums once you put them out. You don't necessarily have to chase that, and that's what I've learned in this as well. It's like, you don't have to put out singles every 2 weeks to still have people listen to your stuff. If you put out quality stuff, if you put out music that people like, they'll come back. They'll come back and listen to you.
It seems like the reggae world is a little bit of a holdout in that regard as well. There's still more albums in that world,
Totally.
Like reggae and metal. That's kind of two of the things that they still put out.
Definitely.
How much have you seen that change the live shows, though, now that bands aren't selling all these records that they used to, and you can only do short runs or have tour exclusive stuff? How much have the shows changed since you've been around? Because you've got a really good bird's eye view being MC and being DJ. You don't have to be a band and be caught up in the mix. What's some of the big changes you've seen?
I've seen a decline in the number of true musicians that exist. I mean, not to put anybody down, but
No.
a lot of bands can exist now off of pre-recorded tracks, and you can go on and you can put on a big show, light show, background, monitor displays, everything, and your musicians that are up on stage could all really be playing half of the song, like half of their instrumentation, like half of the musicality within the song could be not happening live on the stage. It could be running from a track, from a computer, from something, from some sound source.
Right.
And a grand majority of the big bands that we all hear about, that's how they operate.
Right.
And it's like very, very seldom do you just see a group of like 4 or 5 musicians get up there that just play instruments and kill it.
How aware of that do you think the audiences you see are or aren't?
They're very unaware of it. It doesn't matter to them.
That was going to be my next question. Do you think it would matter?
No, they just want to hear good songs. So when they go out and they go to a show and the band's up there and they sound just like the CD, they're happy.
Right.
They're not really looking for those inconsistencies that show the human nature of it. You know what I mean? It's like you will very rarely see a show from a modern reggae band where the bass player does a solo.
Oh yeah.
Right. You can't. You're on the track.
Yeah.
You can't play because you have to stay on time. You have to fit the parts of the backing track because you only got 4 minutes on the track. You can't, do a 16 bar solo and add 30 seconds. It's going to put everybody else off.
Right.
So it's like that. Those things don't exist anymore. Not of the bigger bands. You can still see them on, more up and coming bands. The bands
where the productions don't have them locked on the rails.
Exactly. But once they start getting successful, and once people start expecting that fully produced sound, because a lot of the stuff that people put out is studio albums.
Yeah.
It's not even stuff that they all recorded at the same time. It's pure overdub. And so when these bands go out and they try to play these songs live, they can't do it without the backing tracks. That's all they know. you know? And so it's like, but again, when it comes down to it, the crowd, as long as there's not a drastic mistake, they don't care.
Right.
You know what I mean? They don't care if you're auto-tuned. They don't care if you got backing tracks. They don't care if none of the musicians are even playing their instruments, if they're even plugged in. You know, they really don't care. As long as it sounds good coming out to them and they can dance and they can go buy drinks, it's good.
Yeah, this is a weird thing because I've seen some people make the argument, for want of a better way of putting it, that as long as everybody's having fun, then does it really matter? And that's such a loaded question.
Yeah, I feel it does matter.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But I've always been an outcast in this realm because it's like to me, it's not about how many drinks the venue can sell. It's not about how many tickets get sold. It's what the message gives to the people. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
like I've always written songs for people to hear and get the message out of, not for you to just go out and shake your booty and go get a tequila sunrise. You know, that's not what my music is about.
Right.
It's about consciousness. It's about making you the best version of yourself that you can be through this little bit of insight that you may not be thinking of on your own. You know, through the gifts that I've been given and the information that I feel I have been gifted, I have the ability to help people that want it. But it's hard to do that in a lot of these environments because they don't care. They're just wanting people to buy tickets and buy drinks.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you can sell a good T-shirt too, boom, even better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like that's never been what my music has been about. And so I've always struggled. I've always had that battle. You know, like to book a bar venue and ask them to turn off all the TVs in the background. Like the amount of crap that I've received in my career from just asking them to turn the TVs off so that people could just watch the band and not watch the football game.
Right.
Like,
yeah, right.
You know, like
lots of luck.
Yeah. So.
I have a friend right now that's actually doing an event in St. Pete, and he had to find a venue where they didn't serve alcohol because he doesn't like the pressure of being a beer salesman as an artist.
Yeah. I mean, I've literally had producers tell me to my face, that's impossible. You know, like, or it's going to be very difficult. Like I tried to do a whole tour with no alcohol sales. And I was talking to the promoter about it, and he just looked me straight in the face, and it's like, you're not going to be able to do that. At the very minimum, these places have a power bill.
Yeah.
You know, they need to pay the power bill to give you power to play your instruments.
Bare minimum.
So they're going to sell the drinks to pay that. You know, it's like, I didn't get a cut of the bar sales. You know, that went all to the venue. So it's like, it was a battle, and I didn't win.
Yeah, it's a weird line to walk.
Totally, because it's you know, and I can understand it too because people go out and they want to, you know, they want to have a good time. They live in society and all the pressures of the system, and they've worked their 9-to-5 job for 40 hours this week, and they just want to go out and have a good time.
Hell yeah.
They might not necessarily want to be trying to better themselves.
Right.
They want to go and escape, you know, like
exactly.
So they just want to hear, you know, songs about the beach and, you know, and
the bangers.
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, grab something to drink to help ease their mind while they're doing it, you know, and I can't necessarily knock people for that. But at the same time, I feel like music is so powerful, you know. As a musician, you have so much ability and so much opportunity to reach people and affect them. People will remember a 3-minute song way before they'll remember a 30-minute speech. But yet you can incorporate that type of information into a song where people will be singing it, and it'll be, you know, being further ingrained in their subconscious, and they're not even realizing it, but they're making themselves better people just because, you know, they got this catchy tune that's talking about positivity in their head.
Well, that's Bob Marley War, isn't it? Is War not was somebody's speech?
Right. War was Haile Selassie's speech.
That's what I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a perfect case in point example. You know, that speech is a long speech.
Right.
But the 3 minutes that he took of it is what everybody remembers. It's what everybody knows of as the war speech, you know? But it was really like 20 minutes long. So those 3 minutes, though, because Bob Marley put them and encapsulated them in music, they stick, you know?
Yeah, that one really stuck.
That's a lot of reggae music is like that. Peter Tosh has lots of songs like that. I mean, Buju Banton has songs. Shaba has songs. Sizzla has songs. Capleton. I mean, lots of artists have songs that have messages within them, like deep messages, where it's not just about having fun. You know, it's not just about the escapism of it.
So initially, when you first got into music, was it apparent to you right away that you wanted to be on the more profound, advantageous for humanity side of the fence?
Yeah, definitely. Even before I started music, I had that thought. Like, I remember asking my mom at a young age, you know, how come some artists sing songs about, you know, just love and, you know, relationships, but some people sing songs about, you know, things that are happening in the world. And she said, well, a lot of times they'll start off by singing those popular songs to get an audience. And then once they have the audience, they'll bring in the political aspect of it, or they'll bring in the social, you know, worldview of it to kind of bring that information to people's minds.
The Beatles move.
Right. And I kind of thought that's wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, like
Fair.
And it's kind of cheating. Like it's not being true. You're coming out and saying all these things, yeah, lovey-dovey stuff just to get people to like you, and then you switch it up. Like, that wasn't me. Like, you know, I feel like you got to be true to what you stand for, and I kind of made that stand at a young age, and it's just something I feel I've needed to stick with. You know, like I mean, obviously, like I don't change like my direction. I keep moving forward. You know, like I don't flip flop on stuff. You know, I don't like to look hypocritical. I don't like to sing hypocritical songs. I don't like to, you know, I'm true to what I stand for and what I talk about. So, and I've been doing that my whole life. So.
Well, I know that you've been staying true in your music, and I know you as a real well-read guy as well.
Give thanks.
What were some of the books that helped you shape this? Because the steadfast nature of your beliefs is not an easy thing for people to do. You've clearly done that.
Yeah, I mean, I've read so many books, man. One of the ones that I always recommend to people who first ask me, and this book really definitely helped shape, you know, my just general understanding of Rastafari as a lifestyle. The book is called The Healing of the Nations by Dennis Forsyth. And but I've read lots of books on Afro-Caribbean religions, on, you know, the history of Christian religions. I've read all the Gnostic texts. I've read all of the, you know, edited books. I've read all of the deleted Bible books, all the lost books. So, you know, I try to look for the esoteric stuff as well, you know. But I've also read, you know, like the Bhagavad Gita and, you know, Hindu texts and different, like I seek out the ancient stuff, because to me I feel like that all came from, you know, before the era of mass manipulation, you know? So, I mean, there's still manipulation in a lot of that older stuff too, but it seems to be more easily detectable.
So what do you think is one of the biggest things from those times, the ancient knowledge, for lack of a better way of putting it, that we've completely forgotten and we're totally void of in modern life now?
Oh, man. I mean, there's so much. Like, really just I think nowadays, you know, from the things that I've read about and the way I kind of see the ancient mysticism and things like that, it was much more prevalent in the ancient times. There's a lot of distractions today. You know, people don't get to explore a lot of these things within themselves because there's too many other things they got to worry about.
Is that the way you felt in corporate world?
Yeah, absolutely. I spent every day in the corporate world thinking about everything else I could be doing. Really, and it was like that was, I mean, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm really making a lot of money right now just to sit here and watch YouTube, but I don't want to be here. You know, like I could be doing so many other things with my time instead of, even though it wasn't like, I wasn't suffering, I wasn't like, I didn't necessarily hate my job, but I just wanted to do other stuff.
You were conscious of the distraction.
Exactly. And like I said, from a young age, that's something I never wanted to do. Like I never wanted to sit behind a desk at a computer all day, and I did that for 9 years. And I remember saying to myself, like, this is exactly what I told myself I would not do. And here I am. And it was just that struggle. And it was like, I felt like I was getting all the pacifiers. I was getting the raises. I was getting the trips. I was getting all the corporate things that they throw at you to make you feel important.
Right.
That don't mean anything.
Almost tempting you even worse.
Exactly. And then, also, we're giving you all this extra responsibility as well. And so it just got to be like, nah, this is not for me. Even though I was successful and I was, like a lot of people would love to be in that position.
Well, it wasn't a matter of not being grateful for it. It was just a matter of wearing shoes that don't fit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I felt like I was compromising myself every day by being there.
So you get shoes on that fit.
Yep.
You get to play your music. You get to go on, and you're a family man now, yeah?
Yep. No, my father. So give thanks for that.
Yeah, well, it's good. I always like that adage people say, talk about leave a better world for our children, but leaving better children for the world might be more important. I feel
Very
like
true.
you're probably most definitely doing that.
Oh, yeah, I do my best.
So I know that you're also a musician with instruments. You play bass as well, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about that. You playing bass with Island Asylum?
I am, yeah. Shouts out to Island Asylum.
Yeah, I definitely want to get Anthony in here.
Oh, yeah, he's a great guy, man. Bass was actually the first instrument that I started playing. So when I really was like, when I got out of high school, I remember my uncle had given me an acoustic guitar, and I liked it. But when I would go out to see shows, the bass is what I was like. Yeah. That's what I was watching. You know what I mean? I was watching the bass player. Like, that's what I like. And so I got my first bass for my 19th birthday.
Oh, dang.
And that's when, like, I remember it was the Squire beginner combo where it came with a little practice amp, and it was just, just a cheap Squire bass, like made in Mexico or made in China even or something. Like nothing fancy at all. But I loved that thing, man. And I remember just putting on, like, I learned every Bob Marley song I knew. I learned every Red Hot Chili Pepper album that I had.
Nice.
I learned just like everything I liked. So I would just put on stuff and just try to learn it, just try to learn the patterns. And I didn't know any music theory. I'm just now starting to teach myself like real music theory. Mm-hmm. So I would just learn the patterns, and I would go print off tablature.
Yep.
And that's how I learned to play a lot of the first songs that I knew. Like, it was from tabs, So I would just watch or read the tabs as it was playing and find the position of my fingers and learn the patterns, and and that's really
chisel it out.
Yeah. But so, and then, when I started recording, I would play bass for my songs, and I would, play bass on all the tracks that I recorded. So I still kept doing it, but I never really played in a band. Like, I never played bass in a band, not until Island Asylum.
Okay.
So when Anthony hit me up and he's like, hey, man, I'm doing these videos, and I just wanted to ask you, you totally say no if you want to, but did you want to just come play bass in these videos? He didn't know I played bass at all. And it was just, it was an acting thing. It was just to act as a bass player.
Right.
And I was like, dude, of course. I would love to. And then I told him, I was like, bass is my first instrument. And he's like, wait a minute, what? You actually play bass? I'm like, yeah, I'll bring my own guitar and everything, dude. I'm ready for the video shoot. Let's go. And then he was like, well, do you want to actually play the songs? We got a show booked. This was last year, like in November. And I'm like, yeah, man, I can learn them. Let's do it. And so he sent me the tracks, and it was just 4 songs. So it wasn't anything really difficult to try to learn, but it was the first time I've ever had to really like learn it for a performance.
So that was the first time you ever played the bass on stage?
Yeah, with a band.
Of all the on stage and you've been?
Yeah. The only other time I played bass on stage was at this little tiny bar out in Tampa. There were these two Jamaican guys up there playing cover songs, and I just offered, on one of their breaks, I just went up to him and said, hey, man, I got my bass in the car. You want me to come up and just, play with you guys while you do your songs? I'll just play the bass line to them. And they're like, sure. And I had no idea, like, what I was doing.
That's random
man.
as hell.
It was really bad, like, but it was completely random. But that was my only other on-stage bass experience prior to Island Asylum. But
Well, that's a weird full circle.
totally,
How did that feel?
it was great. It was great. I mean, I love it. Like I'm ready for the next one. So it's coming from being the lead, you know, from being the front man, I guess, of the band to now just being a bass player. There was a lot of I didn't think there was going to be a lot of pressure release, but as a bass player, like I didn't have any pressure. Like I didn't feel like I was the one everyone was watching. I didn't feel like, you know, people were criticizing me or like my performance. I was just like, I can just have fun.
I was gonna say it's a fun job.
Yeah, it was great. And I'm totally addicted to it, man. I've been offering to play bass for everyone now. Like, yo, who needs a bass player, man? Sign me up. But I am working with some other musicians as well for some things coming up. So yeah, you'll see me more on stage as a bass player. So
Very
absolutely.
cool. So I know you got a day-to-day philosophy and not trying to have a 5-year plan, and it's not a job interview. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
No, all good.
But what's the stuff you got coming up on the horizon that you're most looking forward to?
Oh man, I'm ahead of myself, so I do got a couple projects that are done that I'm just waiting to release. I got a full album right now that's called I'm Okay, which is what I'm really excited about. And give thanks, man. It's definitely it's a creative venture for me because it's more of a, I guess, like a hip hop based album. So it has a different sound than everything else that I've released.
Very cool.
So, which I also think might be kind of, you know, contributing to my hesitation. Like I want to release it right, you know, because it's not going to be what people are used to hearing. So I kind of wanted to give it more of an impact. I want everything to coincide, the merch release and the website release, and you know, I want everything to be proper. So, but it's also because I really like it, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, that's when you know you did something right. When you're excited about your own material that late in the game, instead of just feeling like pregnant with it and we gotta go.
Oh man,
you know what I mean?
And it's hard because there's times where I've just been like, man, just release it. Just put it out. And I'm like, no. Like I have this internal battle with myself where it's like, you know, there's this side of me, the typical part of me that's just like, put it out. And then I'm the more rational side now is like, no, let's do this the right way, you know? And so that's right where I'm at. But I've also got other things that I'm already sitting on. Like I've got 2 other instrumental albums, completely finished that I'm just sitting on them. I've thought about just putting those out in the meantime as well while I'm still working on this other stuff.
Right.
But I'm just trying to stay on top of it, and I really just want to do it right. I'm trying not to just do it hastily. I'm trying to do it, you know, proper. So, but I'm always making new stuff. So I'm always working on new things constantly. Trying to still expand my horizons in the whole industry. You know, I'm trying to do more mixing, mastering, more on the engineering side for other people as well. I'd really like to get into like a big studio as like a resident, you know, and you know, like get to do that on a day-to-day basis. Because all of the stuff I do now is just at home, you know, in my own home studio. And I'm really like I want to sit in front of a big console and really like, you know, go to space with it.
Yeah.
So
if you don't like daylight, it's an excellent profession.
Yeah. That's kind of how I am, man. So I don't sleep well. So I spend a lot of time in the studio.
Yeah, studio, big desk, lots of fun.
Definitely.
So we'll get you out of here on a fun one. So you got this record coming up that you want to really do right.
Yep.
In a fantasy world, if you could have a CD release show, you got you and 2 other people you can put on the bill. What's your fantasy CD release show for that record?
Oh, man, dude. Well, for this album?
Yeah. For the one that you want to make sure the T's are crossed and the I's dotted, who would be the best ones to roll out that one proper with you?
This is oh man, it's a tough question because because I see these people as, you know, like I see myself, I would be opening for them,
Yeah.
you know, if they were on the bill.
Yeah.
So,
That's
but
why
like,
it's fantasy world.
totally. Okay. So, I would definitely have Yellow Wolf on the show, and that might seem like an odd person,
Right.
but I do get a lot of inspiration from his stuff, and so I think that's what's kind of driven a lot of this new album creation as well. I think a lot of the stuff on this album sounds like Yellow Wolf stuff,
Permeated into the subconscious.
Yep. And so I kind of feel like that would be a good match. Also, I kind of think maybe, I mean, like, I'm a huge fan of Damian Marley, Kabaka Pyramid, Protege, and I feel like Protege and Kabaka are some of the two artists, and a lot of their stuff is produced by Damian Marley. So I feel like they're like kind of on the leading edge of that kind of dance hall blend, you know. Even people like Runkus and Blue, like, these are new artists that are kind of blending these dance hall styles with this more modern hip hop style. And so
That's a cool crossroads. I'm curious for that for sure.
It's awesome. And I so I feel like maybe if I could get someone like, like Kabaka, Protege, Runkus, any one of those three, and then bring Yellow Wolf on there as well, like, man, that'd be the perfect coming out party for that record. It'd be crazy.
Oh,
so
man.
I'd probably pick Runkus because nobody knows him, and his style is so like out of the box. It's completely like left field, man. It's like nothing you expect.
Love that. I'll definitely have to check that out.
For sure, I'll send you some links.
Hell yeah. Well, man, I very much appreciate you coming down. I had a blast hearing from you. We got to do this again, and we'll explore all the topics with you. Onward and upward, my friend.
Thank you so much,
brother.
man. Thank you for having me, man. My pleasure.